Wonderful, wonderful. And we are finally live. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in with us today. My name is Sarah Harris. I am president and CEO of the Black Business Association. And it's an honor to have everyone join us today. This is our third in a series of four webinars of Young and Empowered series. And we have I'm going to hand it over to Miss Wendy Gladney, who we are partnering with Forgiving for Living on this series. Wendy?
Thank you, Sarah. We appreciate so much and being one of your community partners, just like we're community partners with US Bank, who also partners with the BBA as well. So it's a wonderful feeling when we can all come together to try to connect with the community and make a difference. And like you said, this is the third in our series of Young and Empowered about building the next generation of entrepreneurial leaders. And right now, more than ever, we need to make sure that young people have options, that they know that there's various ways that they can make a living, that they can invest their money, that they can begin to build now for the future. So with that, we're so excited because our special guest today is Sandy Porter. Sandy is a project manager with US Bank, bringing 24 years of experience in financial services. It's so important to make sure when somebody is sharing with you about finances that they have experience. And I would say 24 years definitely tells us that Sandy's had a lot of experience. She leads financial literacy initiatives across California, including the Student Banking Internship Program, empowering students and communities through financial education. Passionate about mentorship and community impact, she fosters partnerships that drive financial wellness and career development. Sandy, we thank you so much for being with us here today, and we turn it over to you.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Sarah. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Like Wendy mentioned, I am West Bank, and one of the things that I get to do every day is talk about money, talk about our relationship to money, and talk about just financial literacy on high school campuses and out in the community. What I like to talk about today and have a discussion on is our values and our influences. And I'm hoping that this discussion is interactive in nature. So, you are more than welcome to put in your thoughts and ideas in the chat. I think that when we all share our ideas and when we all share what we're thinking about, one, we feel less alone, right? And two, we understand that others are also experiencing the same thing. So if you're able to just throw it in the chat, say hello. I would love to see everybody just throw in their thoughts and ideas in the chat. So if we can share my PowerPoint. Okay, thank you. If we can go to the next slide, and just hitting on some points that I wanted to talk to you all about today. I wanted to talk about influences, right? What influences our money decisions? If you really think about our everyday choices, right? From getting up in the morning, what you're going to have for food that day, visiting the local coffee shops, really thinking about, what you want to wear to that special event, any parties that you get invited to or whatnot. Just all of these things that we make, all these choices that we make every day has some money component to it. And if we realize it or not, some of those decisions aren't really ours, right? They are influenced by what we see, what we feel, what we hear out there. So really understanding how our influences are affecting our decisions, I think we'll be more empowered to make better money decisions, right? The other thing I want to touch on is understanding our values, understanding what's important to us and what matters most to us, and really thinking about, are those values aligned with your spending habits, right? All of this conversation for the next, 45-ish minutes is just understanding who we are. I want to talk about just strategies to stay focused, and then set some money goals. So if we can jump into the next slide here, and we're going to talk about influences, right? Really think about your surroundings right now. What influences us out there? um, and how does that impact our choices, right? So if we move to the next slide, I want to take some time to talk about some of these key items. I think the number one influence that we have out there are family habits. Now, if you think about your own family, right, what money habits do they have, and us included, right, because we are part of that family? What habits do we have that influence others on those money decisions, right? Um, I'll give you an example. My younger brother and I constantly have money conversations about, what stock he's just bought, or recently he's going through benefit enrollment, right? So, talking about health benefits or putting away for retirement. These are the conversations that I have openly with my brother, right? What we're saving for. Now, not every family has open conversations about money. So think about your own situation, right? What are some habits that you see? Do you see, your families are putting aside part of their paycheck every other week or every week, right? Are we going out to do experiences that are cost conscious, right? Going to the park, or is our family going out to extravagant experiences, right? One is not better than the other. Is just understanding that we are influenced by what we see within our own family. So, just some food for thought. Friends and peers are a big ones, right? We spend most of our time with our family, with our friends and our peers. If you're out to college or in high school or at work, right? We spend a lot of time with our friends and our peers. Now let's think about the influences that they have over our money choices, right? Do you have a friend that's a spender, or do you have a friend that's a saver? Again, one is not better than the other. It's just understanding that that is influenced. It has some influence over us, right? I have a friend who is a saver. She will not go out and do something that, one, she doesn't really care to do, just to be, in the crowd, right? And she is very disciplined about her saving and what she's saving for. That influences me to think about, maybe I could set aside that $20 or $25 we would have spent at Starbucks, right? But I also have a friend that's a spender who loves to get the new gadget, right? He's very technology savvy. So he's constantly getting the new iPhone, always upgrades on his laptops. And so just understanding their money choices affect my money choices. We're talking about celebrities and athletes, right? What celebrities or athletes do you look up to? Do you follow? Right? I'm not going to pretend that I know all of the athletes out there, but we are influenced about the shoe that they're wearing, or the brand that has just sponsored them, right? Celebrities as well. We look at what they're wearing. We look at what they're driving, where they live. All of these things have some influence over us, right? Social media is a big one. Social media and influencers. I will admit that I am addicted to TikTok, right? But everything that I consume, I need to understand that that influences me, right? Who are the influencers that you follow? You know, whether it's the makeup artist, you know, the health conscious influencer, you know, or the ones that live in luxury. Those all of those things that we see on our social media feed have some effect in our choices, in our decisions. Also, really just understanding that, you know, we're still free to make our choices, but also understanding that, you know, what we see out there could have some influences over us. Advertisement, obviously, you all know that is a long-standing tradition, right? If we think about the biggest advertisement time is the Super Bowl, right? And how many commercials do you see out there? They're trying to influence you. Um, you know, during the Super Bowl, a company will spend millions of dollars in just for 45 seconds to influence you to go out and buy, right? So really important to understand. And also what we see in the movies and what we see on TV will also influence us. So just some things to think about. If we can move to the next slide, I want to talk about influences can be both productive and unproductive.
Hi, Sandy. There was one particular question. You see it at the bottom of your screen, real quick. Is of what are some of the biggest subconscious influences you believe that drive people's money decisions?
Especially among young adults and
New
yeah.
earners.
Yeah, I think a lot of our money decisions do come subconsciously, right? And I'll talk about here in a second, but things that we do out of emotion, right? Or things that we do because we're bored, or things that we do because it's just a habit now, right? For example, you know, during a working hour or working shift for me, I always get up and go for a walk, you know, during my lunch hour. And there's a Starbucks in the same shopping center as my office. And I go there because it's now just a habit, right? It's my lunch break. I need to go, you know, just take a walk, relieve some stress. And I go into the Starbucks just because it's out of habit. So a lot of the things that we do come at a subconscious level, right? I don't know, you know, how many or a lot of our purchases as well is just comes out of um, because we're emotional, right? We hear that all the time about retail therapy. It is a thing, right? It makes us feel better. You know, individuals who've recently lost weight, right? They feel good about themselves. They want to, you know, do something good and they want to, you know, feel good. So then they go out and buy a new outfit, which is fine, but also at the same time understanding of why we're doing what we're doing, right? And like I said, I think somebody had told me, and I can't remember who had said it, but we could afford anything. We just can't afford everything, right? With the proper budgeting, the proper, you know, planning, you can afford whatever you set your mind to. It's just that we just can't afford everything. So some of those things, just something to be conscious about. But talking about productive and unproductive influences, you know, we naturally always go to the unproductive, right? The social media, the influencers, the advertisements. But some influences could be productive, right? Do you have family and friends who are savers who, you know, who set goals and they put money aside for that goal, right? Those are the things that we're learning. Do you have a mentor? You know, we talk about mentors in education, we talk mentors in, you know, the workplace, but do we have a money mentor? Do we have a mentor that will teach us about saving for our goals, who would teach us about, what is investing, who would teach us about building your credit? And so really understanding who is out there, even if it's a social media influencer, a financial expert, financial literacy on your social media, those could be a mentor as well. But start thinking about who is in your life, who is a productive influence over your life, right? We can always point out the unproductive, right? The Super Bowl commercials, the influencers who have an enormous amount of stuff. But think about who's on the productive side, and how can you grow that list of influences over your life that are productive in the money conversation. So just some things to think about. The other thing I would say, and I would throw out and challenge you to think about, is what is the influence you have over others, right? My mom used to always tell me that tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. And I used to get so upset. But the more I think about it, we are the average of, the 5 people that you're the closest to, or, you are the average of the closest people around you. So you are also an influence. Right. So think about that too. What influence do you have over others? And is it productive or is it unproductive? But something to think about. If we move to the next slide, I'll just talk a little bit about social pressure and advertising. What we look at, what we see every day, it's human nature to want what others want, right? We look at our Instagram, we open our social media page and our feed, and we see people who are on vacation, having a great time, who just bought a home, bought a car, whatever that may be, and it's natural to want that. But understand that what's on people's social media, that's their highlight reel, right? We're not good at documenting the struggles. We're not good at documenting the sacrifices, the cost of things. So one, just be aware that we all post our highlight reels, and it is natural. And it is human nature to want what others have. But really understanding who you are, and we'll talk a little bit more about values here in a second, can really help set your own goals and set your own wants into that. And we spent some time on advertising, or advertisers spend money to influence how we spend. Like I mentioned, a company will pay millions of dollars for a 45-second commercial to pull at your heartstrings, right? To get that emotional reaction from you to run out and buy whatever it is that they're selling. Brands seek out influencers, pay them to, post reviews and whatnot. And then impulse purchases. How many purchases have we made that it was just an impulse? The more of these impulse purchases that we have can make it harder to achieve our goals, right? So let's talk about, if we can move to the next slide, let's talk about just what we can do to either block things out, resist unproductive messages, and really understand how we can stay focused on our goals. So if we can move over to one more slide. And let's spend some time on some strategies on how we can stay focused. One, I spent some time talking about influences, right? So number one is just recognize the tactics that are used by advertisers, right? You take this pill, you're going to lose 30 pounds in 2 days, right? Just recognize that, what we put out there, ads, advertisement, it's all for the consumer to spend. So just recognize that is the first, step into focusing on your goals. The second one is building in a pause, and this is what I do all the time. I have shopping carts on my online that are full of stuff that I have not come back to, because I do put things in my cart and I'll come back to it. If I come back to it, meaning I probably really need it. If I don't come back to it, it probably has just passed, right? I was emotional, I was bored. How many of us, were either sitting waiting at the doctor's office, waiting, hopefully not at a red light, right? But waiting for something, and we pull out our phone to just, I don't know, just mindless scrolling, right? That's what I do too. Sometimes I'm just bored and I open my Amazon app, what's on sale, Prime Day's coming, right? So just build in that pause, put it in a shopping cart, walk away. If you're going to the mall or whatnot, walk by, look at it, leave the store, come back if you really need it, but build some sort of pause. The other one is control your environment. We talked about, the group of friends, the group that you are surrounded by, and thinking about who your productive influencers are. You have control over that, right? So one of the things is that I do is control my environment. The other thing I do when we're talking about controlling our environment is sometimes I remove the one click buy on my phone, so meaning I'd have to get up and go grab my card to enter in the number. With Apple Pay, Google Pay, just makes it so easy to, just click and buy. So if you can make that harder for yourself, where you would have to get up and put in that card, that could also help with impulse purchases. The other thing that we talked a little bit about is notice when you are tempted. Going back to emotional versus intentional spending. Whatever it is that you're about to buy, whatever it is that you're looking at, why do you want that, right? Is it an emotional purchase, or is it an intentional purchase? So really noticing when you're tempted. Are you an emotional spender, or when you're bored, or when you're feeling stressed out, or all of your purchases intentional? Talk yourself out of it. Again, building in that pause and talking to yourself. Do you really need that item? And if you do, great, just, purchase that. But if you don't, if you're thinking twice about that, maybe it's not something that you really need right now, right? The last one, this is the one my son is very good at, is calculate how many hours of work or days of work an item is worth. So one of the things he always says, is it worth it, right? If he's going to purchase something that's going to cost him a little bit of money, how many hours of work does he have to spend in order for him to, make that back? That one's always powerful as well, because it really does tell you, like, I have to work 2 extra days or 2 extra shifts in order to buy these pairs of shoes, right? Something that you will have to do consciously is, 1, talk yourself out of it. 2, is it worth it? How much in reality will it cost you to purchase this item? All right, so we talked about influences. We talked about some ways to stay focused on your goals. I want to take some time to talk about our values. So if we can move to the next slide, and really talking about or understanding how our values, or how we can use our values to manage our money. So I want you to take out either your notes app, a piece of paper, and I want you to write down your top 3 values. What matters most to you, right? For me, what matters most is security. I grew up in a single, my mom was single mom, new to the country. She had 4 children. And so we lived paycheck to paycheck, right? We lived with very minimal money or means. So one of the things I value today as an adult and having my own kids is security, is having enough, right? Not necessarily having a lot, but just having enough to survive if I were to lose my job, making sure that my kids were fed and had a roof over their heads. So security for me is my number one value. My other value is experiences. Again, going back to how I grew up, I didn't have very many experiences with my family. So that is one of the things that is important to me, is to give my children, my husband, myself, the experiences to enjoy life, right? So whether that's taking them on vacation, whether that's, going to an amusement park, the experiences is what's important to me. And then my last value is obviously my family, making sure besides I love the discipline, the patience, responsibility. That's a good one. But my family, not just my immediate, my kids or my husband, but my siblings, my mom is important to me. So making sure, again, going back to the having enough, but having enough to take care of them as well. So think about, if we can move to the next slide, what you chose as your top 3 values. Career, here are some of the ones that we hear often, right? Financial stability is the one I hear the most. And when we talk about financial stability means different to different people. It's different for everyone, right? When you're thinking about, security, stability, freedom, what does that look like for you, right? Is it just to, have enough in the event you lose your job? Is that building wealth? Is that leaving, a legacy for others, right? What we call generational wealth as well. Friendship and social connection. If you think about your values, what does that represent, right? If you talked about, having mental and physical health, that probably you want to, spend money in the self-care, being well balanced and for your well-being, right? So just things to think about what matters to you. As you think about your values, think about the last big purchase you had. Whatever that may have been. Now, or many of your purchases, do they align to what's important to you, right? One of the things that I look at for my own spending habits, and what I ask others to do as well, is think about the things that you're spending money on. Does that align to what's important to you, right? If I were to go out with some friends, and it's always happy hour, dinner, lunch, whatnot, I know I'm going to spend money, right? Can I offer a different solution to say, hey, come on over, I'll cook, or we can spend some time by the pool or whatnot, knowing that if I were to spend this money, then that money will not go to whatever that I am saving for a vacation, an experience for my kids, right? So really thinking about, as you're spending money, as you making money choices, are the choices that you're making aligned to what's important, right? If you are talking about independence and security, right? I would imagine that you want to save money so that you have the independence. What might that look for you? If you value independence, are you saving to, move out, get an apartment? Are you saving so that you're not, shackled to your job, right, to your paycheck? So some of the things that you can think about. If we can go to the next slide as well, and talking about, again, our values, and understanding that our core values can help you set realistic goals, right? Whatever it is that's important to you, I think somebody has said discipline and responsibility. What does that look like? A responsibility of, fill in the blank, right? And how do you set a money goal towards that, right? Is it a responsibility to take care of others? Is it a responsibility? What does that look like for you? And how do you set a realistic goal for that? Understanding your core values can, like I said, help you make spending decisions that would help you meet your goals, right? If education is important, if education is something that you value, what goals do you have to meet that, to make sure that that you align with that value for you? Again, this whole conversation is just about building awareness within yourselves, and really understanding that your money decisions should align with your values. I am going to the Beyonce concert on Thursday, and I just got done spending money on a new outfit yesterday. And thinking back at it, it was probably a purchase I didn't need to make, right? I value the experience, which I was okay spending the money on the tickets. But as far as the outfit, it was an impulse buy because I had, looked at my social media feed and saw what others were wearing because it was her opening night yesterday. And so I thought, oh, I need a new outfit. But now looking back at it, 24 hours later, one, it doesn't really align with my values. I'm not, a fashion person. I do value the experience. So again, I have no problem spending for the concert ticket. But as far as the outfit, that was probably an impulse buy. That was probably an emotional buy. And that was probably influenced by social media. So again, you are going to make those choices, and you're going to look back and think, oh, maybe that wasn't the best use of my money, and that's okay. It's just the reflection that you have, and then what do you do going forward to avoid those. So we talked about our influences and we talked about our values. Now I want to talk about setting some goals, right? You have your top 3 values, and just setting some goals. I don't know if you all have heard of the SMART framework. Can purchases that make you happy okay if done in moderation? Absolutely. The whole point of this money discussion, or all money discussions, is about the quality of life, of your life, right? Making purchases that make you happy. And that's the whole point, right? Of understanding what's important, of understanding what influences you, of understanding how you influence others as well. Because at the end of the day, you need to have the freedom, or you need to have the ability to make those choices, make the choices that, purchasing the things that make you happy is 1, setting the goal, 2, understanding what's important, and 3, understanding what influences can help or hurt you from getting to those goals, right? I am not the person who's going to tell you you can't go to Starbucks every day. If going to Starbucks every day makes you happy, go for it, right? 1, it has to be in your budget, or it has to be in your plan. And 2, you need to just understand that why you're doing that. And 3, making sure that it's not hurting you from achieving any other goals, right? But absolutely make purchases that make you happy, as long as it's not deviating you from your goals. So talking about the SMART the SMART framework, if we can go to the next slide. One more, please. And what your goals should look like, or what your framework framework should look like is one, your goal should be specific. Again, if we want to go back to your values, and if you want to take the example of my value of experiences, right? I value experiences a lot, actually. And say I set a goal for my family and I to go on vacation next summer. One, I want to make sure that it's specific enough. So thinking about your own goal, how specific can you get, right? If we're talking about my goal and going on vacation next summer, where am I going, right? And specifically, how much is that going to cost me? Right? How long am I going for? So if we can move to the next slide, to think about some things to ask yourself is, what exactly do you want to accomplish? The more specific that you can get, the better. One of the things that I say, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but this is what I tell myself. Having a goal with no action is really just a hope, right? I'm hoping to go on vacation. I'm hoping to, leave a legacy behind. I'm hoping for this, right? Until you add some action, I believe then it becomes an actionable goal, right? Until you add, some structure behind that goal, that is what's going to take you along that journey. But being as specific as possible. If you're talking about you want to be financially secure, and I think we had the conversation a little earlier, is what does that mean to you, right? Financially secure means differently. Has a different meaning to different people. But what does that mean for you, right? Do you want to be able to, not live paycheck to paycheck? How much do you want to have in that savings account in order for you to feel like you're not living paycheck to paycheck? Right? If you want to not be dependent on anyone else, right? On your parents, on your spouse, on your significant other, what does that look like for you? You know, how much do you need to save in order to feel financially secure? If your, value was freedom or being free or being independent, I would ask the same thing. What exactly do I want to accomplish? What does that mean? We all already established why it's important to you. It's a value that you have, and it's something that you really want. I think a lot of the things that we talk about, we always say the American dream, whatever that means now, but owning your own home, I think a lot of us think that that's what people want to hear, but is that something you really want? Right? I also have this conversation with my kids too, is, they're all, in their 20s, and they're all either graduated college or in college right now. But that was always a question for me too, is why do you want to go to college? Not because we said you had to, but is it something you really want, right? And the same for any other goal that you have, just making sure that it's something you really want and that's important to you. The second thing we want to think about is, how do you measure that? And I was talking about being financially secure or independent or free or all of these other things. How do you measure that? How much do you need? How many of, anything do you need? How will you know when you have achieved your goal? And I think this is the most important, right? To add a money value or a dollar value to it. Going back to my example of going on vacation, right? Where do I want to go? How long do I want to go for? And how much is it going to cost me? Is a really important one. If you want to be financially secure, how much is that going to cost you? Is it 3 months of the income that you're having now? Is it, do you want to be able to live for a year without having a regular paycheck come in? And what is the amount of money that you need to save for? How would you know you have reached your goal? I think that's the most important, right? If you want to graduate college debt-free, realistically, how much money is that, right? And what is it going to take to get you there? I think that's the third option here is action oriented. What specific actions do I need to complete my goal, right? If you want to graduate college debt free and you're getting the student loans or whatnot, what specific actions do you need? Do you need to get a side hustle? My daughter is out in Boston right now. Actually, she graduates in May, and she walks dogs on Rover. Um, and she works as a hostess in a restaurant. So what are things that you need to do? What specific actions do you need to do to complete the goal, right? If you wanted to be financially secure and is going to cost you X amount of dollars in your savings account, how much money do you save a week, a paycheck? Do you have a specific action plan that's going to help you achieve this? If you want to go on vacation next summer, well, you have 12 months, right? Or we're in April, we're in May, you have 13 months. How much money each month do you need to save to get to $3,000, $4,000? I don't know where you want to go. If it's local, right, you probably need $1,000 to be able to make, choices that for vacation that you don't really have to worry about the money part, right? So if you want to spend $1,000 next summer on going on a trip, right? How much money do you have to save each month to get there next May, right? I can't do math in my head, so I'm not going to give you a dollar figure, but I'll make it easy for myself. If you need $1,200, right, in 12 months, you probably need to save $100 a month. You need to get that specific with your plan in order for you to achieve that goal, right? And is that reachable? Making sure that your goals are not unattainable, because one, that is, it's defeating, but need to make sure, is your goal achievable, right? If you need to save $1,000 a month, that's probably unattainable, right? But if you need to save $100 a month to get to 1,200, that's something you can actually reach. So making sure that your goal is reachable. And again, time bound. How much time are you going to give yourself to reach this goal, right? Again, the vacation was the easy one. You're going next summer is going to take you 12 months, right? If you want to graduate college debt free, is that 4 years? Is that 2 years? Depending on your journey. How much time, or, I want to make sure that I'm debt free after college graduation, and I'm going to give myself 4 years to get there, right? 4 years post graduation. So making sure that one, you have a time constraint to it. Two, that is reachable, right? There's some action behind it. What specific things do you need to do? Right? Also, do you need a mentor, or do you need an advisor or somebody who can, one, be your accountability partner? It doesn't necessarily have to be an expert of all things financial, right? But are you letting anybody know about your goal, right? I think the easiest way, or to achieve goals, is to have somebody there with you, to have a buddy or an accountability partner, somebody who's going to be able to tell you, hey, don't spend on that new outfit because, you want to be debt free in 4 years. Do you have that person in your life? Are you that person in somebody else's life as well to help each other reach their goal? But make sure it's specific and make sure that there's some action behind that. So money, what I would say, if we can go to the last slide, what I would say is money is a relationship, right? There's going to be ups and downs. You're going to have to figure out what works best for you. But money is a lifelong relationship. And what I would say is the first thing you need to understand is understand yourself, understand your spending habits, understand the influences around you, the influence you have of others as well. But most importantly, understand what's important to you, and set a goal based on that, right? If you want to be financially free, financially stable, if you want to have security, if you want to have the freedom to live how you want to live, you have to set a goal. And it has to have a money value, right? I want to save up, 1 year's worth of expenses so that I can go pursue my passion without having to worry where my next paycheck is going to come, right? Just some things to think about. We're not going to solve it from one day to the next. The other thing I would say too is money will give you a lot of things, right? But the control over your money, the control over your money decisions, your spending habits, that all comes from you. And it's not going to look the same from one person to the next. It's kind of like a diet, right? Not every diet works the same for each person. And you might have to try 50 different diets to get the right one. That's the same thing with money and budgeting and setting goals. It might not work the first time at bat, right? But you can't give up on it. Like I said, it's a relationship. You can't give up on it. You have to keep trying. And, if you find something that works right away, great, keep going, right? But if it doesn't work right away, if you stumble, just get back up and try again. But I would say my number one thing is get a buddy, get a mentor, get an accountability partner, and be open about it. Be open about money. I think that's one of the things that we talk about all the time is that most people don't talk openly about the money situation. So don't be afraid to just have the money conversation. So with that is all I have, Wendy and Sarah.
Such a wonderful, to me, presentation, especially in times like this. I mean, we have a lot of just different information, sensory stuff, just life is moving even faster these days. And just to be able to kind of take a step back and really, have that thoughtful conversation and outlook in terms of how are you really thinking about your money and how do you manage it? I think that this is a conversation that needed to be had because we always need to kind of just recheck back in with that. And I love the SMART tools and goals with that. So I just appreciate your presentation today. Thank you so much for coming today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And Sandy, I want to say, I loved your approach about it because there's a couple of things that really stood out to me. One was about having a mentor in the financial industry, in the financial world, because like you said, we always get a mentor or a coach when it comes to our careers or education.
Yeah.
And sometimes even somebody that we'll talk to about relationships and so forth. But I don't know why we're always afraid to let people know that we need help. Brianna Stevens is one of our young ladies that is in our mentorship program. Thank you, Brianna. And so it's just so important. And then the other thing, when you were talking about different types of individuals, I'm one of those savers. I'm one of those people that kind of like, do I really need that? I think I'll wait. But I save. But when I really, really want to do something, then I'm prepared and I get to do it in the fashion in which I want to do it. So I've learned from a very, very young age that kind of, you don't have to have everything. And, but, then you're ready for the things that you really want. And I think that's one of the things the young people today need to also, I would say, gravitate towards is yes, it is important to have things that make you feel good and to be able to get through your days and your weeks, but have some long-term goals, like you said, in terms of, so you're not living just for today, because as we get older, we know tomorrow's coming. And so preparation. So thank you, Sandy, so much. Thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to say, I love the strategy of taking a pause, just taking a beat, take a minute, just walk away from it. It's still there in your cart, whatever. If you really need it, and when you come back, you'll know that, okay, move on. But a lot of times it just either stays there. By the time you do,
you forgot about it.
Yeah, you remove it, it's no longer available, something. So I love that strategy of take a pause, just you stop being in the moment with it.
So true. So true. So Sandy, as we begin to close out, do you have any just words of wisdoms that maybe was not a part of your presentation that you just would like to leave with our audience today? Just something that's worked for you, something you recommend, food for thought, that pearl, that gem.
Yes, I would say, every decision we make is a vote of who we want to become, right? I think I saw this or I read it in Atomic Habits. So, every decision that you make is a vote for who you want to become, right? And that's true in everything that we do in life, but that's also true in the spending decisions that we make, right? If I buy this today, what do I miss out in the future? But that's what I would say is, every choice you make is a vote for who you want to become.
I think that's so good. Yes, I just recently read Atomic Habits, and it was in that. And the thing that's so interesting is just the word habit. We have to get into good habits of everything within our lives. So, absolutely. Sarah, do you have anything you want to close us out with today?
I just again say thank you so much. This is and like we named it, Young and Empowered. So this is an empowering series, and we really hope that people are getting something from it. This is a great information. We thank you for coming here today and presenting. And we also want to remind people to join us in May. And Wendy, it is May 20th, where we will have a Southern California gas company that will join us. So
let's tell them how they can hear this presentation again.
Certainly. So this is streaming live now on both the Facebook and YouTube pages. The Facebook pages for both the Forgiving for Living as well as for the BBA. And where did I put? This is the contact for the BBA, where you can get their information, for Forgiving for Living, and can follow the social medias from there, as well as for the BBA. I have joined the BBA, but the web pages there is bbala.org. And from there, you can get to our social media pages for both our Facebook and the BBA's YouTube page. And it will be available even after this presentation.
So it has a life, where it can still, if you missed it today, people can still be able to see it. And then also we'll make sure the link goes to you as well, Sandy, so you can share it even internally.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for joining today. We had Viviana, great teachable moment. And we had Michelle Morbell thanking us for the presentation and some others. So thank you everybody for joining us today.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
All right. And we'll end the stream.